So in this vocabulary video, we are going to learn all about weather and how to talk about the weather. The weather is just what's going on outside. So let's get started. Weather. This is a thermometer. You can tell what temperature it is by where the red line ends. So we're at about 40 degrees Celsius, which is the same as I would say 103 Fahrenheit. So one peculiar thing about the United States is we still use Fahrenheit. We use Fahrenheit, we use feet, we use inches, we don't use the metric system. So this can be difficult for people that come to the United States when they're trying to talk about the weather, because you have to either just know or do some math in your head. But here are a few key temperature marks to help you remember the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit. So water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. Water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So whenever you see that the temperature is 32 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, that means that any water will turn to ice. Any rain will turn to snow. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, but boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So the difference between 100 and 0 Celsius is the difference between 32 and 212 Fahrenheit. Now, you don't need to do math for this. If you just remember a few key areas, which I will show you now, you should be okay for talking about the weather. Okay, so this is the first thermometer. Okay, this is the other thermometer. I put here on the left what would be considered freezing, and then you can look and see what that is in Celsius. So look, I consider freezing in Fahrenheit is 32 degrees or lower. So all of this here is freezing. So if we go over, that's 0 degrees Celsius or lower. So 32 or lower Fahrenheit is freezing. So if someone says, what's the weather like outside, and it's 20 degrees Fahrenheit, you would say it's freezing outside. Freezing means very, very cold. Cold enough that water makes ice. So now we have cold. Cold is between 32 and 50 degrees. So if someone asks you, what's it like outside, and it's 45 degrees out, you say it's cold. 45 degrees Fahrenheit is cold. Now, cool is between 50 and 60. Cool isn't cold, but it's not exactly comfortable. It's just a little bit cold, just very, very little bit, almost comfortable. So that would be from 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 60. What's considered warm would be 70 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That would be a nice spring day, the beginning of summer. Hot is from 90 degrees to 100 degrees. That's considered hot. We live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I don't believe I have ever seen it above maybe 102. So where we live, it does not get much hotter than about 100, 102. But there are other places in the United States, like the South, Arizona, New Mexico, where it can get much hotter. But this is a good scale. So this shows you what is freezing, what is cold, what is cool, what is warm, and what is hot. Hopefully that's okay. So now we're going to move on to what's the weather like. So we're going to learn some vocabulary words to answer the question, what's the weather like? So here we have the sun. The sun is a noun. But if someone says, what's the weather like? You would say it's or it is sunny. Sunny is an adjective. So when you say it's sunny, you're describing the weather. So sunny is an adjective. So it's sunny. What's the weather like? It's sunny. You usually answer the question with the adjective form. We'll keep practicing. What's the weather like? It's rainy. So what's the weather like? There is rain, noun. It's rainy, adjective, or it is raining, present continuous. But the easy answer, what's the weather like? It's rainy. It's rainy. What's the weather like? It's windy. There's a lot of wind, a lot of air moving around. What's the weather like? It's windy. What's the weather like? It's stormy. It's stormy. That means there's clouds in the sky. Maybe it looks like it's going to rain. What's the weather like? It's stormy. What's the weather like? It's humid. Humid just means there is a lot of water in the air. One thing about humidity is that it makes it feel hotter. So the more water in the air, the more warm it feels at the same temperature. Humid air also makes people's hair get puffy, really big. So that's humid. What's it like outside? It's humid. What's the weather like? It's humid. What's the weather like? It's cloudy. It's cloudy. There are a lot of clouds in the sky. It's cloudy. What's the weather like? It's snowy. There is snow. It is snowing. What's the weather like? It's snowy. What's the weather like? It's drizzling, or there is a drizzle. A drizzle is just a very light rain. Very light, very little water falling, but still there is water. Drizzle. What's the weather like? There is fog, or it is foggy. Fog are just clouds of water that are very low down. It makes it difficult to see, especially when you're driving. It's foggy, there is fog. Misty is the same. So there is mist, it's misty. All right, this is different. What's the weather like? It's smoggy today, or there is a lot of smog. Smog is kind of like mist, but instead of being from water vapor and nature, this is pollution. These are clouds that are built from car exhaust, from chemicals in the air. You don't want smog. Smog is bad for your health, and if you live somewhere with a lot of smog, you could have health problems. Smoggy. All right, this is easy, but this is just a rainbow. A rainbow forms when there's water in the air, rain, but then there's also sun. So a lot of the time you see a rainbow after the rain stops when the sun comes out. So this is a rainbow. Heat wave. Heat wave. In English, a heat wave just means that there will be very warm temperatures over a spread out area for an extended time. So this map here shows a heat wave in India. This is incredibly hot. I'm not very good with Celsius, but this is incredibly hot. This is a very bad heat wave in India and Pakistan. The opposite of a heat wave is a cold front. A cold front is when there will be very low cold temperatures over an extended area for an extended period. So this is the United States during a cold front. The entire center of the country is very cold. That's what's in purple. Cold front. Okay, so now we have lightning and thunder. During rainstorms, thunderstorms, there is lightning. Lightning is the light. Do you see the picture here? It's the light that goes down. It's just what you see. You only see lightning. Thunder is the noise. So first comes lightning, then you wait a little bit, few seconds, and then that is thunder. So lightning comes first, then thunder, the noise. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little about natural disasters. Natural disasters are more than just weather. They're events that usually harm people, harm buildings. Natural disasters cause people to lose their homes, it's not just weather. It's much more extreme than weather is. Okay, so the first natural disaster is a hurricane. Hurricane. This looks like a hurricane off the coast of Florida. Hurricane. Now, a hurricane is a spinning storm that starts in the ocean and then it hits land. And when a hurricane reaches land, it can be very, very bad. There are very strong winds, very strong wind, very heavy rain. Sometimes there is a lot of water on the streets. Hurricane. One thing about hurricanes is they always have this kind of spiral pattern. Do you see how it's kind of like a spiral? And then in the center, there's that little hole. All hurricanes look like this. Hurricanes are also classified by categories. I think there's category 1 through 5, but they do this by looking at how fast are the winds, how big is the hurricane. So not all hurricanes are equal. One of the most recent very bad hurricanes we had was Hurricane Maria, that did a lot of damage in Puerto Rico. Islands are very, very vulnerable to hurricanes. It's dangerous for islands when there are hurricanes. Okay, so hurricane. Hurricane. Next we have an earthquake. Earthquake. An earthquake is when the ground shakes. An earthquake is when the ground shakes. Earthquakes are caused by the Earth's tectonic plates slipping against each other. So earthquakes are either common or less common depending upon where you live. We live in Philadelphia. We do not have earthquakes in Philadelphia. That's because we are not living on one of these lines. There are lines all over the world where earthquakes occur. And essentially what happens when an earthquake happens is that we're all floating on the Earth's surface. And then think of this as two different things of land. One will start going under the other one, and then all of a sudden, earthquake. I was trying to give a scientific explanation. But that's why earthquakes depend on where you live. So Philadelphia, no earthquakes. California, yes, earthquakes. Chile, yeah, earthquakes. Japan, yes, earthquakes. It's all because these countries are on these lines that we can't see that are rubbing against each other. So earthquakes. Earthquake. Whoop. Landslide. Landslide. A landslide is when part of the dirt, part of the earth, falls, like off the hill, off the mountain, and mud will come sliding down. This can be very bad if the mud covers a house, a business. People can get trapped in the mud. The mud also goes very quickly and could even knock down buildings. This is a landslide. So this is with mud, with earth, with dirt. An avalanche is very similar to a mudslide. It's just with snow. So you're on a mountain and there's a big mass of snow. It falls and it just goes down the mountain. It's dangerous because it goes very quickly. And if you're standing on the mountain when there's an avalanche, it could completely bury you in snow. The snow could be over your head within seconds. So, avalanche. This is more a concern for people who live in mountains or people who go skiing for fun. All right, next we have tsunami. Tsunami. I think tsunami is a Japanese word, and this goes back to what I was talking about with earthquakes. So, an earthquake is when the ground shakes. See, what happens if there's an earthquake underwater? Because when there's an earthquake on land, look. So this is a building. Earthquake. Ah! The building fell. Well, what happens if there's an earthquake underwater? What happens is a tsunami. A tsunami occurs when there is an underwater earthquake. This underwater earthquake creates a giant wave that can then hit a city, hit a beach, whatever it may be. Tsunamis are mostly in Asia, I believe. Part of that is because there are a lot of island nations and also where earthquakes occur, because you need to look at those lines. So I know Japan has tsunamis because they live where there are many earthquakes, but they're also an island, so they're surrounded by water. Tsunamis are very, very dangerous. This is not a normal wave. This is a wave that is as tall as maybe a 10-story building, like 100 feet tall. If you are ever near the beach or whatever it may be, and then you see that the water in the ocean is kind of going back into the ocean, run. Seriously, run. Run as far away from the beach as possible. Anytime the ocean starts going back, like it's like, oh, the water is going back towards the sea, that means there is a tsunami coming and you need to get to high ground as fast as you can. So that is a tsunami. Flood. Flood. Floods can be caused by many things. Just having a lot of rain. Floods can be caused by hurricanes. But a flood is just where the water is staying in the streets, in people's homes. The water doesn't go into the ground. It starts getting higher and higher, and then you're walking around in water. So all of these people are in a flood. The opposite, well, not the opposite, but the opposite-ish of a flood is a drought. A drought occurs when there is no rain for many days, weeks, months. This is the ground. When there is very, very, very little water in the ground, in the soil, in the dirt, it forms these cracks. So this is very dry. A drought is when there's no water. Volcanic eruption. Volcanic eruption. This is just when a volcano, a mountain, this is like a mountain, erupts. When the magma, the hot lava, goes out of the volcano. That is a volcanic eruption. Not all volcanic eruptions are exciting like this one. See how it's up in the air? A lot of the times it's just a very slow kind of like leak of lava, but a volcanic eruption can be a very big deal. It can hurt people. There was a volcanic eruption in Washington State in the United States, I believe in the 80s. But a volcano erupted, and then all those hot clouds and the lava came down the mountain, and it did kill a few people. So that's a volcanic eruption. Another very famous example is Mount Vesuvius. The ancient city of Pompeii was at the base of a volcano. So here's the volcano, there's the town. Volcano erupts, covered the entire town. It was buried under layers of volcanic ash. And I think a few hundred or a few thousand people did die. But this was almost 2,000 years ago. I believe the volcano erupted in 79 AD, 79 years after Christ, perhaps. Volcanic eruption. Forest fire. Forest fire. This is pretty self-explanatory. A forest fire is when the forest, the trees, catch on fire. Now, there are several reasons why forest fires occur. The first could be there's a drought. Remember, a drought means no rain for a long time. When this happens, the trees are very dry. And think about it. Is it easier to start a fire with dry wood or wet wood? So usually forest fires occur when there's a drought, when the trees are dry. So the trees are dry, very easy to start a fire. What starts the fire? It could be literally anything. It could be people that are camping and they're cooking over a fire and they lose control, they forget to put it out, but their campfire, their tiny fire, spreads. It could be someone smoking and they flick the cigarette butt out the window of their car and their cigarette starts a forest fire. I have even heard that someone's car, a metal part, hit a rock and it created one spark. Forest fire. Forest fires spread quickly and are hard to control. They're very hard to control. They can burn thousands and thousands of acres very, very quickly. These are widespread fires. California in the United States has a lot of forest fires. They have a very bad problem with forest fires. Sometimes when there's a forest fire, people need to leave their homes because it's not safe. So a forest fire is a natural disaster. Okay, so that's all for weather and natural disasters. If you want to, you can rewatch the video, practice the vocabulary. Even though we can't go outside because lockdown, coronavirus time, you can still look outside. Look outside. Or maybe open a window. What's the weather like? Is it warm? Is it cool? Is it sunny? Is it rainy? Comment below. What's the weather like right now? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a nice day.